When Raymond Clark became Denver's most reliable mail carrier, residents trusted him with their packages and personal information. But when his prescription drug addiction and identity theft schemes consumed him, he began stealing Social Security checks and murdering elderly recipients who complained, turning mail delivery into deadly house calls. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the video. The Colorado mountain air carried the scent of pine and snow as Raymond Clark organized mail bundles and prepared delivery equipment for what would become the most dangerous postal route of his 14-year career as the Rocky Mountain region's most experienced mail carrier and postal delivery specialist. At 47 years old, Raymond had established himself as Denver's most dependable postal worker, specializing in rural route deliveries and senior community services that attracted elderly residents, remote homeowners, and disabled individuals who valued his reliability in delivering essential mail and packages to locations that other carriers found challenging to access. Raymond's postal route covered over 60 square miles of Denver's outer suburbs and mountain communities, featuring isolated residences, senior living facilities, and rural properties where residents depended entirely on mail delivery for prescription medications, government benefits, and essential communications with family members and healthcare providers. His clientele included elderly Social Security recipients whose monthly checks represented their primary income source, disabled veterans receiving medical supplies and benefits, and isolated homeowners whose remote locations made reliable postal service a critical lifeline to the outside world. The interior of Raymond's postal truck reflected his commitment to professional mail delivery and his understanding of residents' dependence on reliable postal services for their basic survival needs, featuring organized mail sorting systems, secure storage for valuable packages, and emergency communication equipment for handling delivery challenges in remote mountain locations. His uniform displayed postal service credentials, safe driving awards, and commendations from grateful customers whose lives had been improved through his dedicated service during emergency situations and severe weather conditions. But beneath Raymond's reputation for postal excellence lay a dangerous combination of prescription opioid addiction, systematic identity theft, and calculated murder that had transformed his mail delivery routes into criminal enterprises where vulnerable elderly recipients and suspicious investigators met their fate through stolen benefits and deliberate overdoses. "Good morning, Mr. Clark," said Eleanor Morrison, his 9 o'clock stop and an 81-year-old retired teacher whose mountain cabin required daily mail delivery for prescription medications and Social Security benefits that represented her only income source during retirement. Eleanor had been receiving mail from Raymond for over 5 years, trusting him not only with her essential deliveries, but also with detailed knowledge of her financial situation and medical needs that made her vulnerable to exploitation by someone with access to her personal information. "Good morning, Mrs. Morrison," Raymond replied with the postal professionalism and community service dedication that had made him legendary among Denver's rural residents, who viewed him as both mail carrier and community lifeline, capable of ensuring reliable delivery of essential services while maintaining absolute confidentiality about residents' personal and financial circumstances. "I've got your prescription delivery and your monthly benefit check. Everything looks to be in order for today's delivery." Eleanor had become Raymond's most dangerous customer, not because of her demanding delivery requirements or her remote location, but because of her recent discovery of missing mail and her growing awareness of the identity theft operation that Raymond had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate postal delivery services to vulnerable elderly residents. What Eleanor didn't know was that Raymond had been systematically stealing from elderly mail recipients and murdering suspicious clients for over 4 years, using his postal expertise and access to personal information to conduct identity theft operations while eliminating anyone who discovered his criminal activities. Raymond's transformation from dedicated postal worker to calculating killer had begun 6 years earlier, when his prescription opioid addiction had escalated from legitimate pain management following a workplace injury to daily dependency on fentanyl and other powerful narcotics that consumed his postal salary and forced him into desperate relationships with organized crime figures who controlled Denver's drug distribution networks. His addiction had grown to cost over $300 per day, while his access to elderly residents' mail had provided opportunities for identity theft that generated substantial additional income through Social Security fraud and prescription drug resale. Faced with increasing pressure from drug suppliers and potential exposure by suspicious postal supervisors, Raymond had begun using his mail delivery access to conduct systematic identity theft operations, stealing Social Security checks, prescription medications, and personal information from vulnerable elderly residents who depended on him for their essential mail services and had little ability to monitor or report his criminal activities. His criminal activities had escalated when several elderly recipients had discovered evidence of mail theft and had threatened to report their suspicions to postal authorities and law enforcement agencies, investigating identity theft patterns targeting senior communities. Raymond had murdered his first victim, an elderly man who had detected missing Social Security payments, by overdosing his prescription pain medication during what appeared to be a routine prescription delivery consultation. The success of his first murder had convinced Raymond that eliminating suspicious mail recipients and threatening investigators was both necessary for protecting his theft operation and relatively easy to accomplish, given his access to elderly residents' homes and his knowledge of their medication schedules and health vulnerabilities. Over the following 4 years, Raymond had murdered 12 additional individuals using various methods that took advantage of his postal knowledge, his access to residents' prescription medications during delivery situations, and his ability to stage deaths as medication accidents or natural causes related to age and health conditions. His victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of his theft activities, their potential cooperation with authorities, and their isolated living situations that made their deaths easier to attribute to natural causes or prescription medication errors. His victims had included Dr. Robert Chen, a retired physician who had discovered evidence of prescription tampering and whose medication delivery had resulted in fatal drug interaction from deliberately modified prescriptions; Jennifer Martinez, an elderly woman who had reported missing mail to postal authorities and whose death had been staged as accidental overdose from manipulated pain medications; and David Foster, a postal inspector who had been investigating theft patterns and whose rural route consultation had ended in fatal poisoning, disguised as heart attack brought on by high-altitude exposure. "Raymond, I need to discuss some serious concerns about missing mail and reports of identity theft activities connected to your postal delivery route," said Detective Sarah Rodriguez of the Denver Police Department's Financial Crimes Division, as she intercepted Raymond during his morning delivery route carrying federal warrants to inspect his postal vehicle and interview him about suspicious activities. Detective Rodriguez specialized in investigating identity theft operations and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of mail theft that exploited postal services and elderly residents' trust in mail delivery professionals. Detective Rodriguez's investigation represented an existential threat to Raymond's criminal operation, as her law enforcement expertise and access to postal crime databases could expose the systematic identity theft operations and connect him to multiple suspicious deaths among elderly mail recipients. "Of course, Detective Rodriguez," Raymond replied, though he felt the familiar surge of opioid withdrawal anxiety and criminal desperation that accompanied any official scrutiny of his postal operations by law enforcement officers who possessed the training and resources to detect evidence of mail theft and systematic murder disguised as natural deaths or medication accidents among elderly residents. "Mail security and customer protection are always my highest priorities, and I want to cooperate with any investigation that might help protect residents and ensure that postal services operate according to all applicable federal regulations and safety standards." Detective Rodriguez consulted detailed reports from postal inspectors and elder abuse investigators that showed patterns of missing mail and elderly deaths that suggested systematic criminal activity rather than random mail theft or natural mortality among aging residents with health conditions. "Raymond, "I've been investigating reports of systematic mail theft and identity theft operations that appear to be connected to elderly residents on your postal delivery route," Detective Rodriguez said with the investigative precision that had made her successful in solving complex financial crime cases. 12 elderly individuals who received mail delivery from you have died under suspicious circumstances, with several of these deaths occurring immediately after the victims had reported missing mail or had expressed concerns about unauthorized access to their Social Security benefits and prescription medications. The detective's identification of the identity theft patterns and her recognition of the timing correlation between mail theft complaints and elderly deaths confirmed Raymond's worst fears that his criminal activities had been analyzed and connected to his systematic elimination of suspicious mail recipients and potential witnesses to his theft operations. Raymond's response was swift and deadly as he realized that eliminating Detective Rodriguez was essential for protecting his criminal enterprise and preventing exposure of his systematic identity theft and murder operations. "Detective Rodriguez, I think there may be some misunderstanding about the inherent challenges of mail delivery to elderly residents and the unfortunate reality that seniors often experience confusion about their mail and medication schedules due to age-related cognitive decline," Raymond said, while discreetly reaching for a modified mail sorting tool that contained a concealed injection mechanism loaded with concentrated fentanyl for emergency elimination of law enforcement threats. "Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in my postal truck, where I can demonstrate the security procedures that might explain these apparent discrepancies." Rural mail delivery involves complex logistics that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with postal regulations and elderly resident care requirements. Detective Rodriguez agreed to examine Raymond's postal procedures, not realizing that the mail carrier was leading her to his postal vehicle, where previous murders had been committed, and where Raymond planned to inject her with the fentanyl using his modified sorting tool during what would appear to be accidental contact with postal equipment. Raymond's plan involved convincing Detective Rodriguez to examine specific mail handling procedures while explaining postal security protocols, then using his modified tool to inject fentanyl directly into her bloodstream, causing fatal respiratory depression that would appear to be a heart attack brought on by the stress of investigating complex financial crimes in high-altitude conditions rather than deliberate murder. But Raymond's carefully planned murder of the detective was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of federal agents who had been investigating postal crimes and identity theft networks involving elderly victims. Special Agent Michael Torres of the Postal Inspection Service had been conducting a comprehensive investigation into systematic mail theft and identity theft operations that exploited postal delivery services to target elderly residents for financial fraud while eliminating potential witnesses. Agent Torres specialized in investigating postal crimes and had developed expertise in tracking criminal postal workers who abused their delivery access to commit systematic theft and fraud against vulnerable populations. The federal investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple postal facilities and elder protection agencies who had noticed patterns of missing mail and elderly deaths that suggested organized criminal activity involving postal workers who had access to sensitive personal information and valuable government benefits. Agent Torres had been conducting surveillance of Raymond's postal activities and had documented evidence of systematic mail theft, identity fraud, and suspicious patterns of elderly deaths that suggested his postal expertise was being used for organized criminal activity rather than legitimate mail delivery services. "Raymond Clark, I'm Special Agent Torres with the Postal Inspection Service," he announced as he approached Raymond's postal truck where the mail carrier was preparing to murder Detective Rodriguez. "I have federal warrants for your arrest on charges of mail theft, systematic identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your systematic exploitation of postal delivery services for criminal fraud operations and elimination of potential witnesses." Raymond's reaction to the federal agent's intervention was a combination of postal authority confusion and desperate attempts to maintain his mail carrier credibility, as he realized that law enforcement agencies at multiple levels had been investigating his mail theft activities and had connected them to systematic elderly murders and organized identity fraud operations. His carefully maintained reputation as a dedicated postal worker had failed to protect him from comprehensive investigation by agencies with expertise in postal crimes and elder exploitation. Special Agent Torres, there must be some serious misunderstanding about legitimate postal delivery operations and the complex challenges involved in providing reliable mail service to elderly residents who often have difficulty managing their correspondence and medication schedules, Raymond said frantically while abandoning his plan to inject Detective Rodriguez and attempting to preserve some semblance of postal professionalism despite the overwhelming evidence against his criminal activities. I am a career postal employee with 14 years of experience providing essential mail delivery services for Denver's most vulnerable residents. All of my postal operations comply with established federal regulations and customer service standards designed to protect mail recipients while ensuring reliable delivery of government benefits and essential communications. Detective Rodriguez looked absolutely stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the mail carrier she had been investigating for identity theft. Her financial crimes investigation had not only exposed Raymond's systematic theft and murder operation, but it also prevented her own death at the hands of a killer who had been using postal services as cover for systematic elimination of elderly residents and law enforcement threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed Raymond's arrest revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and the sophisticated methods he had developed to exploit postal expertise for systematic identity theft and murder. Forensic analysis of Raymond's postal operations revealed extensive evidence of his identity theft activities, including stockpiles of stolen mail, sophisticated equipment for forging government documents, and detailed records showing Social Security fraud and prescription drug resale operations. His postal truck contained modified sorting equipment for criminal use, stolen prescription medications worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and comprehensive files containing personal information on dozens of elderly residents who had been targeted for systematic theft and murder. The investigation also uncovered Raymond's connections to organized crime figures who had been purchasing stolen prescription drugs and fraudulent government benefits while providing protection for his theft operations. His criminal network included corrupt pharmaceutical suppliers who had facilitated drug resale, dishonest healthcare workers who had provided medical information about elderly residents, and illegal drug dealers who had coordinated distribution of stolen prescription medications. Most disturbing was the discovery of Raymond's detailed knowledge of elderly residents' health conditions and medication schedules, which he had used to identify vulnerable victims and manipulate their prescription deliveries to facilitate both theft operations and elimination of potential witnesses through medication tampering and deliberate overdoses. Raymond Clark was ultimately convicted of 13 counts of first-degree murder, systematic mail theft, identity theft, conspiracy to commit organized criminal enterprise activities, and numerous other charges related to his exploitation of postal delivery services for criminal fraud operations and elimination of potential witnesses. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout Denver's postal service community, prompting immediate reforms in postal employee screening, mail security protocols, and elderly protection measures designed to protect vulnerable mail recipients from exploitation by trusted postal professionals involved in criminal activities. Several other postal workers and mail carriers were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of postal operations and new requirements for background monitoring, mail tracking, and elderly resident protection measures that made it more difficult for criminals to exploit postal services for systematic theft and murder. Detective Rodriguez and Special Agent Torres received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in postal crime investigation, developing new techniques for identifying mail theft operations and protecting elderly residents from exploitation by criminal postal workers. Eleanor Morrison and other surviving mail recipients required extensive financial consulting and identity protection services to overcome the trauma of learning that their trusted mail carrier had been systematically stealing from them and murdering elderly residents while exploiting his postal access for organized criminal activities. The Postal Service implemented comprehensive new safety protocols designed to protect vulnerable recipients from exploitation by unethical postal employees. The case prompted comprehensive changes in postal service regulation, including mandatory drug testing for all postal workers, enhanced oversight of mail delivery operations, real-time tracking of valuable mail items, and new reporting procedures for suspicious postal worker behavior involving recipient safety or potential theft indicators. Raymond's conviction also led to increased cooperation between Postal Service organizations and law enforcement agencies investigating elder abuse, with new protocols designed to identify postal workers who might be exploiting their delivery access for systematic criminal activities while eliminating potential witnesses. The Postal Service and broader government benefits delivery systems implemented revolutionary new safety measures, including enhanced security protocols for valuable mail delivery, comprehensive elderly protection programs, mandatory reporting of suspicious postal activities, and improved training for recognizing signs of mail theft and recipient endangerment in postal delivery settings. 5 years after Raymond's conviction and life imprisonment, Denver's Postal Service community continued to implement safeguards designed to protect elderly mail recipients from postal workers who might abuse their positions of trust and delivery access for criminal purposes. The postal worker who had promised to deliver essential mail and protect residents' most important communications had instead used his postal expertise and delivery access to commit systematic identity theft and murder while exploiting elderly residents' trust and vulnerability during their dependence on reliable mail services. However, his crimes had been thoroughly exposed, and his victims had found justice through the dedication of investigators who refused to accept elderly deaths as mere natural causes. Raymond Clark's final delivery had been his own transportation to permanent federal imprisonment, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even postal professionals who attempted to exploit their delivery expertise for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated law enforcement agencies worked together to protect innocent residents from predatory postal workers. The postal worker's final delivery had reached its ultimate destination of justice, serving as a lasting reminder that those entrusted with our most essential communications must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and that postal professionals who would exploit recipient vulnerability for criminal gain will ultimately face the full consequences of their betrayal of public service and community trust. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.